All right, so I want to talk to you about another method that I've been doing, and this is sort of like a Dakota fire pit um, hole, and then another hole not too far away from it, and a tunnel connecting the two. But the idea for me was that air would be pulling in through here, and that would act as like a draft, and air would blow and hit the middle here. And I made sure to make it big enough so that I could, big and tall enough so that I could put majority of the pieces that I would make in here, majority of the pieces that I throw. Another thing to do, when I very first started this up, I should have recorded that. When I very first started I started it here. I started all the pieces here. All the pieces were on top, and they were in these angles here, these openings. And I just grabbed a bunch of brush, put it in there, lit it up, and let that burn down, not only to heat up the inside, but to heat up the bottom of these pots, because the bottom of these pots are thicker and they take longer to heat up. So I like doing the bottom of the pots first, and that just gets it used to the temperature. And then after I have heated it up in here, well, that brush is burnt down, the pots have kind of warmed up, the bottoms have warmed up, I'll let it all burn down, and I'll try and get thicker pieces of wood, something that can smolder, something that can burn, but it's not going to burn very fast, and kind of just let it slow burn. I'll let that burn for maybe about 2 hours. I'll just let this candle, and hopefully all the moisture will get out of these, and within those 2 hours you should start to see some discoloration. And obviously you might have to add more wood to it, but within, like, I would do probably 2 hours of candling. Some days I don't do the entire process in one day, just because I'm getting tired of always seeing my pots crack, and really the only times that they crack is when I am impatient. When I'm impatient, they crack. When I'm not, and I'm just putting this into a routine, they don't crack. Like, one day I'm candling, and I usually try and mix it in with, all right, if I need to make a fire to do something else around the homestead, like I need this fire when it gets bigger and I'm actually covering up the pots, I'm gonna need to use that fire to dry out some wood so that I can use it for a retaining wall. So multi-purpose uses is what I really need to do when doing this method, because it pays to be more efficient and use your fuel while you're doing other things. So what am I getting at here? What I'm trying to say is that this is a new method that I've been using. It's worked really well. I've been able to use it with really big pots, and all you have here is an intake right here for your air, fresh air coming in. It's pulling in through here and following it to the heat source, and that will keep these smoldering. See, these are pretty thick. If you put it on top of the ash and the coal after it's burnt down, all that brush is burnt down, these will smolder. If you put it on top of it while it's still burning, then these are going to burn, and I don't want these to burn really fast. I want them to smolder. I want them to leave more of a bed of charcoal. So that's why I put it on to the ash and the coal after everything is burnt down. I put these on top, and I'm hoping that it won't start a fire. If it does, then just add some water to the top of it and keep it smoldering. You don't want it to get really hot, okay? You want it to be just hot enough. And right now, it's just getting the pots warmed up to the idea, which is nice. You want to go slow with your pots whenever you're heating them up. in a fire pit. If you don't go slow with them, you are going to regret it. So make sure you go slow. Turn your pots. Once this starts kicking up a little bit, warming up a little bit, your pots will be warming up with it. Okay, so that's the good part of doing it slow like this. Your pots are really going to reciprocate and appreciate the fact that you're not just setting it right next to a fire. I'm really trying to get into the process and the habit of doing this slow and controlled. I used to fire my pots within like 3 to 4 hours, and it can be done, but you'll get a lot of cracks. You'll get a lot of pots that break and spalled just because you didn't throw it consistently, or you didn't let it heat up long enough, or this, that, and the other. This method takes out all of those mistakes, from the thin walls to the thick walls to the heat fluctuations, all that. If you just go slow, by the time you build up to something really hot, your pots will be ready. So, long video for just the fact that I wanted to say this is the new method that I have now. Dakota fire pit. You put your pots on top, boop, boop, boop. Make sure you have some sort of opening through here. Put your pots on top. All the pots, not just one, all of them. Imagine all of them here, no pots inside. Take a bunch of brush, toss it in, light it, start it up. Get it burning. Let the pots get the heat from that, and then it'll absorb into these bricks too, so you'll have a thermal mass that's retaining heat. It'll warm up the bottom, it'll warm up the pot, let it burn all the way down. When it becomes ash and coal, add thicker pieces of wood that'll smolder, and you put your pots inside. While this is smoldering, it's still producing heat. It's just not going to be as hot as a fire would be. So it's producing heat slowly. And that slow release of heat will help warm up your pots, candle them, so that by the time this actually does light up and start burning, your pots will be used to the warmth. It'll be used to the heat. Shouldn't have any thermal shock. And you can slowly start building up your fire. Now, once it starts burning, I would let it burn. I wouldn't add anything more to it. Let it keep burning, let it keep burning. Once it's down and it's just getting to coal again, add some more to it. And let it stay around this size for a little while before you decide to make your pot bigger. See, it's starting to catch on fire now, which will produce a lot more heat. All you need to do is make sure that you're continually turning your pots while it's in here. You can get gloves for this, like oven mitts. Do really well just to grab on and turn your pots. Or you could use like tongs like these, but oven mitts I think work just as well. And if anything, I would put them on bricks like I did this one. I just didn't feel like grabbing bricks, but grab bricks and put it up so that heat's still coming up to the bottom too. It's not going to be sitting on the sand. I really should go and get some more bricks. Put these all on bricks. I'll be back in a second. All right, I'm going to do a little experiment. We're going to see, I added the bricks underneath all these except one, and we're going to see the bottom and how the bottom compares to the rest of these that are elevated after we fire everything. Hopefully everything will go well. It won't go like this pot. Looks good, looks good, looks good. So Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to tell how well this actually does, because a lot of that heat is going to get absorbed into the sand, and a lot of this is going to absorb it just because it has that natural draft coming underneath it. So we'll see. But yeah, everything's been added, and that's my method. So just let that sit, let it smolder, let it burn a little bit. Once these change colors, they will change color. They'll start to take on more of a dark brown. Like for me, they turn more into like a dark brown. These will fire to an orange, but they'll absorb a lot of that smoke as the clay body starts to warm up. It's going to be able to absorb that carbon from the smoke. And once you see it starting to absorb carbon, you know that the clay body is starting to warm up and get warm enough to where it can start getting closer to the fire, or you can start building the fire up bigger. So either one of those, either move the pottery in closer or just make the fire bigger, either one. But I'm just going to keep building up the fire around it, and eventually I should be able to toss all this brush for the very end, toss all the brush on top of it and let it completely blaze out, and should be good to go. But I will give you guys an update as it gets further. All right, so I just turned these, but as you can see, that's the discoloration that you'll see, that dark area that is on the side of this. A lot of these that are on bricks, it's actually happening to the underside of them. I've added maybe like 4 or 5 more pieces of wood to the pile over the course of like 2 hours. It's been about 2 hours now. Obviously I've only got one side really heated up, so I think now what I could do is probably start adding some more wood to it. I would say that, you know, probably don't do it on a day like today where it's clear skies, really windy. Usually the cloudier days, when it's not going to rain or storm, just cloudier, the wind is usually calmer, and it's just nice to have a fire when it's, you know, like that anyways. But I started this up today. I need to get these fired, and if it's windy, just make sure that, you know, it's kind of, you have your structure around the pit kind of built up so it's breaking a lot of that wind, because that wind is going to pull heat from your pieces, and it's going to pull heat from your thermal mass, which are these bricks and this wall of just sand. So things to keep in mind. It's going well right now. They've heated up. I think I might start adding some more wood to kind of get into some of these crevices here and see how that goes. Here's a pro tip. Use a reciprocating saw to cut off dead pieces of wood like this into manageable sizes that you can put into your pit fire. Alright, so I've added some more logs onto it, and the logs were not burning and they weren't coal yet when I added these new ones on top. And I just added the new ones on top because they're smoldering really well, and I think that's because it rained. It rained maybe like 2 days ago, so I'm assuming a lot of that moisture got absorbed into this wood. And even though this is live oak and it's been just sitting out there for, you know, maybe 2 years now, even though it's been sitting out there for 2 years, you can obviously tell how solid this stuff is. I mean, even the outside look is right underneath the bark. It's all degrading, but the core of this wood, I can't even put my fingernail through that, and it's been just sitting on the ground for 2 years. To me, that's crazy. But either way, it has been degrading, so it's probably a little bit more porous. It can absorb a little bit more water and retain a little bit more of that water. So it's smoldering really well right now, which is why I added more to it. And hopefully it'll just keep smoldering and produce a little bit more heat as it smolders and burns and that core really starts to get on fire, and it'll build up. Usually if it hasn't rained and there's not a lot of moisture in the logs, you're going to need to add water to it just to keep it from taking over, your pot's getting too hot. But once you start noticing discoloration in your pots, you can ease up a little bit and, you know, add on some more logs and try and produce a little bit more heat. So that's what I'm doing now. And I will just let this run for the foreseeable future. Add logs if it's starting to look too low. Add more if I think it needs to get a little bit hotter. And a lot of this is just going to be from experience. You're going to need to do this a couple of times to really understand the whole process and why everything is the way that it's supposed to be done. Obviously, you can, once you understand this process, you can change whatever step you want to make it more efficient. If you do, let me know in the comments. But yeah, this is pretty much it. Once this burns and I can get coals in between all of the crevices in here and let that heat up around the pots for a while, then I'll throw this on. But that'll probably be another hour or two. Oh, probably longer than an hour or two. All right, so it's been about an hour and a half. I went to go get something to eat and came back. It's still smoldering. Obviously this has burned down a lot. Haven't added anything to it, and I can't really tell now because it's dark outside, but I know that they have been heated up properly enough that I can actually put these guys into some very hot conditions. Let me see if I can get the flash on. Yeah, you can tell the discoloration. It's discolored and then it's also turning orange. So it got black, it absorbed the carbon, and now it's getting so hot that's actually burning the carbon out of the pot. And when it does that, you know that it's starting to fire. So I'm assuming that a lot of these now probably have the same thing happening to them. Can't really see on that one. But yeah, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build the fire up again. I'm gonna turn these so that they're facing into the fire and they can get their proper heating on each side. And actually what I might do is I might take these pots out and open it up. That way I can put the pots into the middle, still have a coal bed on the outside, add some of these logs to build up that heat on the outside of it again. That'll just give it a little bit more even heating now that everything is candled. I know the bottoms of these are gonna be good, except for maybe this guy right here. I'm not sure about him. But the bottoms of these other pots should be good. So that's where I'm at now. I think what I'm gonna do is open it up, get the coals to the outside, add more logs, get these situated to the middle, let that fire build back up around the sides, and then I'll add all of this on top to fully fire it. Then I'll just let it burn out, and whatever is left after that will be the finished result. All right. Excuse me. All right, so I open up the coal bed. I move the bricks to the middle of the coal bed area. Tried to get as many coals out as possible, but they kind of just keep tumbling in because it's kind of a sloped fire pit. But anyways, I open that up. I put my best pieces in the middle. Okay, best pieces in the middle. This piece is like a test piece. It's technically not on a brick, but I did want to keep it as close to the middle as possible, so it's sitting on a piece of charcoal right now. And this pot, I just didn't have any more brick, so it's chilling in the coal bed too. And yeah, best pieces in the middle. I'm gonna let the log smolder for a little bit. I'm gonna let it get used to it because I did have them on top of here for a second while I opened that up. So I'm gonna let it get used to the heat again, and then I'll put this on top of it and we'll go from there. All right, so it's been sitting for about 10-15 minutes now. I think it's gonna get as acclimated as much as it can at this point, because remember, the coal is dying out and being smothered, so the heat production is actually going to go down some, especially if you're putting on new wood. So I don't want these to get cool either, so I'm gonna go ahead and start adding this. I'll just add it slowly at first around the sides, and as the fire starts building up and as more of these twigs and branches kind of make a barrier around the pots, then I can start putting things on top of the pots without there being too much weight actually on top of it. A lot of that pressure will go towards the sticks and the limbs and all that other stuff. So make sure you build a barrier kind of around it at first, like another wall, but of, you know, all the wood. And once that barrier gets above the pots, then you can start adding it to the top of the pots. Got a lot of sticks here, so try and do your best to keep it around the pots at first. See, the sticks will start to build up, and then those will kind of act as a buffer, so not all the weight is going right on top of the pots. Kind of adding it around it as much as I can without really putting it directly on top of it. Now, if you've been candling this for hours and getting it adjusted to the heat, then I don't think you should have any explosions or spalting or cracks or anything like that. So now I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add the rest of this to the top and just let it burn down, and come back the next day. I'll let it cool down. I'll let it cool down in the pit, and that should be that, honestly. Oh yeah, steaming. Love me a good fire. And you really want to do brush at the end because you can see how quickly it burns. It's lightweight. You can cover all of your pots with brush really easy. Brush is just thin limbs, leaves, grass clippings if you have them, stuff like that. You're just going to toss that over it. It'll act as like a thermal mask, kind of like a shield, and it'll encapsulate a lot of that. You can see this ledge here that's forming, and that's going to help from wild heat fluctuations as like wind blows in, and especially when you have your pit dug into the ground, that's going to help a lot with those wind fluctuations. And you know, just to be safe, you don't want the fire escaping and burning anything. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll have an update for you tomorrow morning. Appreciate you guys watching, and come back for more. All right, so it's the next morning, and all of them look good except this one. It's probably just because it's taller, and I didn't get the rim properly heated, so that's probably why it exploded like that, unfortunately. Let's see. Here's this one that was not on a brick. Yeah, bottom fired well. This one was on a brick. Let's see. I don't think the bottom of this one fired as well. Oh yeah, the bottom of that did not fire well. How it didn't fire that well, I'm not sure. I would assume that it would. Maybe the ash stopped it, the bottom from firing. Let's see. Let's check this one. That one doesn't look like it's fired that well either. Yeah, I mean, I could still put my fingernail in that. Well, that's upsetting. The one that was not on the bricks fired extremely well. Huh. Interesting. It's really interesting. Here's another one that was not fired on the brick. Just laid it on the ground. Look at that. Look at the bottom of that one. Still fired better than the other ones. I'm scratching the surface, but I'm not getting into it. I think these need another round of firing. Not this one really, but all the ones I spent the most time on did not fire well. Bottom of this one didn't fire too well. That one exploded. And the bottom of this guy still needs more firing. So what I'm going to do is take out all the ash. I can collect that and use it for glazes, and then I'll restart this fire. Just fire it again, and I think I'll turn it over this time where the bottom is turned over like that, so I can really build the fire on top of it and just roast it. Alright, so I refired them again to get the bottom good, and you can see now that I can't even make a mark on there now. And even though I can't make a mark on there now, I messed up because I didn't heat it up properly again. I thought it was still somewhat warm from the night before because there was still some coal in the bottom, but I was wrong and wasn't warmed up enough, and now you see all these cracks, and that's from thermal shock. So it just I think because it was bigger and it wasn't, I guess I didn't completely cover it, maybe, or maybe I had it completely covered but some of the sticks just burnt out on one side, and just created a lot of cracks in it, and spalted right there. So, you know, not the best refiring. I definitely should have let it warm up some more before I just covered it completely again, but these I think were small enough and were covered well enough that they all fired well. That sounds good. You can tell. Thud, ring. Here's another one. Ooh, this one's hot still. I think it just sounds kind of duddy right now because there's still some coal in there, but I don't see any cracks on this one. I think it fired well. This over. And the bottom is definitely fired well now. Really, this should have all been done in one take. I should have just kept that fire going last night and made sure that I really fired these well. I think that's my only issue with this method is really I can't tell without pulling it out of the fire if the bottom's fired well enough. So when you think it's been fired well, maybe add on another hour of firing, you know, really just to sink it in. Especially this guy, he was a little bit thicker than my other ones. So yeah. Anyways, that's just another firing method. Maybe you can get some use out of this. I'll try and make another video on a different firing method that I'm trying to do right now, and post that here soon as well. But if you enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe. It helps me out a lot, and I'll see you on the next one.